Hello, House of Destiny. We have a very special missions update for you today, and it's all beginning with 7 children. These 7 children have received the funds needed for their heart surgeries. These are life-saving surgeries, and they will be soon headed from Uganda to India to have those surgeries. And we actually heard that this is the most complex group of heart cases that they've ever seen at once. The cardiologists have told us that most have waited so long for care that they are on the brink of not being operable. So this is like in the nick of time, these babies are being able to receive these surgeries. I just want to tell you about them. There's 7 of them, so bear with me. Micah, a 1-year-old, has a large hole between the chambers of her heart that causes her to feel extremely weak. Emmanuel, he's an 8-year-old, and he was born with TOF, which honestly should have been repaired as a baby. So he has waited 8 years to receive this surgery. Alma, she's 3 months old. Poor little baby. She was born with a very complex heart condition. You have Jolene, a 5-year-old, born with a heart defect. Zuriel, she's a 2-year-old, born with a large hole between the lower chambers of her heart. You have Eliana, she's a 3-month-old, born with multiple cardiac defects, including double outlet right ventricle, a very complex heart condition. And last but not least, you have Lois, which is 17 years old, and he has a rheumatic heart disease. Now listen, these are just 7 of many of the children that you are able to impact with your seeds of love. If you are a partner, thank you, because your giving allowed for these 7 children to receive these surgeries. But if you're watching and you're not a partner and you want to be a partner, you want to be a part of this, I would encourage you to follow the link on your screen, become a partner. Let's continue to save lives. Let's continue to make an impact, and it all begins and ends with you. Thank you so much.
Again, a little bit of music for you before we go into our second Pythos teaching. Now, I hope for those that did the first teaching yesterday, I hope that you enjoyed it. I know that you must have, because it's offering you valuable information and how to get over it, and it's informing you how to conduct good spiritual warfare with it. It takes knowledge. That's all it does. And God feeds you that knowledge from the future. So I'm going to show you the different types of desires that are in the atmosphere and how the enemy feeds on the self-desire and wants to fan that flame so you feel really good about yourself, and tries to misguide you and direct you in another way. This spirit, as you know, is a spirit of flattery, and it flatters and it feeds you. And as you learned, or as I taught you, that spirit gets closer and closer to you as it familiarizes itself. And the only way that it can do that is and it cannot see and hear, as you know, and so it detects the chemicals in the air and the dust, which speaks of flesh. So it's always a good thing to understand that walking in the Spirit, and that's another whole deal by itself, walking in the Spirit. Many of you have not, or you don't know that I have a school. It's called the School of the Prophet. I teach many, many things like this in greater detail. And one of them is living in the Spirit, and what that really, really means. So there's a course, called Destiny. It's the 3rd season now, the School of the Prophet, and you can also join anytime you like. And just go to kimclementschool.com. Okay, so I think you're all ready. Don't forget, as I said, it's always important to participate, not just by receiving, but when the teacher teaches you, that you share good things, because they're sowing into the revelation that's coming. So during this teaching, as I did last night, you're going to have an opportunity to be able to sow during that time. Don't walk away from your computer and say, well, I don't owe anybody anything. It's not owing anybody. It's taking that responsibility, saying, I've received a revelation. I don't even want to receive it in my heart, but I want it to manifest. And that's what happens when you give. So God bless you. Enjoy it. And I'll see you tomorrow night. Hi, everybody. Good to have you with me. You're on From the Matrix with me. And I'm really happy to have you on today, because we are dealing with a very, very important subject, and that is the spirit of divination, which we've called Pythos. So if you were with me last week, you remember that I dealt with a lot of things. It's not just a matter of an enemy getting to you and being able to suffocate you. One thing I do know is that there is such a thing as spiritual breathing, and I'll show you that in the scriptures. One of the things that I'm doing on my Destiny course on the School of the Prophet, we have a lot of students, and you could become one as well. And it's very important that you be trained in the prophetic. I was just talking to my staff before this, and I said, do you know, in the 90s, I was so persecuted. I'm persecuted today as well for the prophetic words that I get, because a lot of people don't understand the way God operates. But in the 90s, it was so bad, and it's because there was no knowledge given out, not enough knowledge. We had great, great men like Prophet Bill Hammond and others that taught about the prophetic, but it just wasn't widespread enough at the time. So I'm so excited to be able to share with you the treasures that I have inside of me. Thanks. The treasures that I have inside of me that have been placed there over the many, many years of experiences and encounters, and to share them with you. So the School of the Prophet, I am dealing with destiny and the importance of you understanding not only what your destiny is, but how to get there. And one of the lectures I just did was on unbalanced breathing and how stress can cause you to lose step with the Spirit and lose your breath. I'll do a little bit of that today, because one of the ways of losing your breath is the spirit of Pythos, which we've dealt with. Before I move on to that, I want to thank you for coming on and being with me, because I get so many letters from so many people, emails, sharing on how it's blessing them. Some of them are saying, I don't even have a church at the moment, and this is my church, and this is my source of spiritual nourishment. Listen to this one quickly. Hi, Kim. My name is Eric. I just wanted to thank you for your Bible study on Tuesday nights. I've recently moved to Las Vegas. You have really been keeping my faith strong right when it seems I needed it the most. Every Tuesday night, it's like an energy boost. And till the following Tuesday night. It's amazing how every week what you talk about is almost exactly what I have been struggling and thinking about that particular week. Thank you again, and God bless, Eric. And there are many others. Eric, thank you for writing me. I really appreciate that, because it encourages me to, I need it as well, because I want to know that you are being ministered to. If some of you have no church, I encourage you to get to a church. But in reality, a lot of people don't do that, and this is a source to them. And so as I'm giving to you and giving you nourishment, so I pray that you'd reciprocate during this time, this 50 minutes that we teach, and give an offering as you would do normally in a church meeting. This is a meeting of gathering of thousands of people all over the world, in fact. So I encourage you to do that, but we'll talk about that later on. I want to get on with the word. I want to speak to you about a few things before I do. Many of you know about my friend Michael Babin, Bishop Babin from Oceanside, California, who had an incredible miracle that God gave him. I was in Los Angeles, and he was in San Diego, died 3 times, resuscitated, put on ice, in a coma, and I sent a word. In fact, I sent 2 words to him via his son and those around his bed, saying that he would come back to life, and these would be the results, and this is the timing on it. Very powerful. As a result of that, and the prayers of course, his church and the people around him, his family, he came back to life. They said he'd be a vegetable, but actually this is a living, current miracle that took place in the United States of America in 2010. Can you imagine that? 2010, one of the greatest miracles. And let's go. I'm going to speak to you today about a few things and share with you what happens when I get a revelation from the Spirit of God. 4 things that I hear when dealing with prophetic revelations, especially for someone else. Kim, what do you hear? Do you hear the voice of God clearly? Or what is it? I want to tell you something. When I'm standing in front of somebody, I am hearing various voices. There's only one voice of God, however. That voice is very striking. And it's not like you hearing me right now. It's a knowing, and it's a perception, which is important for you to understand. Remember, I said to you that the spirit of Pythos is only able to get to you by getting close to you. It's a non-venomous creature, and so it is in the spirit as well. It has to get close to you. And I spoke about a few things last time. I spoke about it familiarizing itself with you, getting close to you, then it's equalizing itself with you, and then neutralizing by squashing you. And what happens to its victims is that it swallows the victim whole head first. So the first thing you're going to be dealing with the spirit of Pythos and divination is the head. This is what he's going to play around with. He's going to make sure that he feeds you information that you want to hear. Now, what are the 4 things that I hear as a prophet when I stand in front of somebody? And so many of you have seen this in my meetings and the clarity that I have. It's not something that I go confidently into, but once I hear the voice of God, it's this clear. Man, I just know it's him and I say it. Now, there are times where I have not interpreted it correctly, and I've always been open and honest with everybody and telling you that this sometimes does happen, but it doesn't make me a false prophet. Today you'll understand what a false prophet really is, and most of you watching me right now, at some point in time in your life, there was a false prophetic word given to you, whether it was done on purpose or it was done by somebody without knowledge. It did happen, where you were fed something that was not of the Spirit of God. Okay. The 4 things that I hear, the 4 voices that I hear when I'm standing in front of an individual or a situation, number 1 is self-desire. Self-desire is what you want yourself. Okay? That's the voice that I hear. Oh, I want, a big house or whatever. And all of this may be good, but self-desire is not what I'm going to speak. The second voice that I hear is misguided desire. This voice is what family and friends desire for you, but may not necessarily be what the Lord wants. So I hear that voice as well. I hear your desire and the misguided desire, which is for family and friends, what they desire for you. Self-desire, misguided desire. Write this down. Then number 3 is evil desire. What is evil desire? Now, not necessarily you desiring something evil, but it means what your enemy desires for you. That's what it means. So, self-desire, misguided desire, what family and friends desire for you, and they may be right at times, but it may not be the voice of God. Evil desire, what your enemy desires for you. And number 4, pure desire. What is pure desire? Is what God desires for you. That's important for you to understand in this entire equation, because all you want is the will of God. All you want is the desire of God in your life. Okay, let's move on. You must know how to distinguish between the divine and from the profane. Let's define divine. Okay, let's define it. What is divine? Well, chocolate cake is divine. Oh, yes, it is. That's divine to me. I'm just kidding with you. Okay, what is divine? The nature of God. Supremely good. Unusually lovely. Anybody experience that with God? He's unusually lovely. The expression of God, that's what divine is. The attributes and properties of God. All of this is the divine. It's all about His nature, His goodness, His loveliness, His expression, His attributes, His properties. And by the way, for those that think that I don't believe that God chastises, you're wrong. Read some of my prophecies, you'll find out that I totally believe that He does. But it's all done in love. The one thing I don't like is when people speak about God in terms of His judgment and then put an angry God there. That is incorrect. He does everything out of love. And if He is doing it out of anger, usually He is stopped by one of His servants who is an intercessor. Moses stopped Him when he said, "Get out of my way and I'll let me kill these Israelites, your people, and I'll make of you a great nation." Moses said, "This is not divine. This is outside of your nature, outside of your supreme goodness, outside of your unusual loveliness, outside of your expression, outside of your attributes, and outside of your properties, and I will not get out of your way." Good on you, Moses, because he was a friend to God. Now, I'm trying to tell you and show you that everything God does is out of love. In other words, He wants to help. Now, what is the profane? Because profanity is more than just speaking bad words or swearing or cussing. What does it mean to be profane? And this is how you'll understand the difference. It means to misuse anything that should be held in reverence or respect, to defile, debase, to employ basely or unworthily, to employ something unworthily. That's what profane means. It's the misuse of that which should be held in reverence and respect. It means to defile. Now, the thing about divination, the whole issue on divination is to defile you. You see, we have this idea that defiling comes by our wrong deeds and our acts. There's truth to that, because in every deed there is a seed. Write that down. In every deed there is a seed. There is truth to that. But we have been misguided and not realizing that Jesus said, how are you defiled? Not what comes out of your body, but what comes out of the heart causes defilement. Now, we need to understand that, because divination does defile. It defiles us by a subtlety, by coming close to you, and out of the heart is poured these different words. Now, I'll explain that in a minute. But divination, what is divination? Divination is an imitation of the divine, an imitation of it. It's profane, but it comes in an imitation. So what does divination mean? Flattery, compliments, excessive and insincere praise, puffery, I like that word, adulation. Now, just to get this, it's flattery, it's a lot of compliments. I get very nervous around people that are complimenting all the time. It's excessive and insincere praise, puffery, adulation. And this is the one I want to deal with today as well, is perception by intuition and association. Not a bad cup of tea. Who made it? Good for you, Thomas. Okay, so what is the divination? Perception, not by divine inspiration or divine foresight or divine insight, but perception by intuition and association. What do I mean? Somebody talks to you, speaks to you about something, they associate, they can pick up what you do, like Sherlock Holmes. You see that movie sometime, you'll see how he picks up, he basically actually prophesies, so to speak, to a young girl that's with, who's the guy that's with him? Inspector... Well, his friend, whatever his name is, the guy that was always with him. Inspector, okay, anyway. Who? I can't hear what you're saying. You've got to put the mic on. Dr. Watson, Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson. Dr. Watson brings this girl, and Sherlock Holmes has never seen the girl. It's a great example. In fact, go and look at that movie and look for that piece when they go to the restaurant, and Sherlock Holmes looks at her and says, "This is where you've been. This is where you come from." All by her clothing. He even speaks about a ring that she had on her finger that has and you could see that she'd taken it off, or a bracelet or whatever, and the sun had not burnt there, and so she'd been on vacation at a place where there was sun. He does the whole thing based on his association with of her physical attributes, and so he's able to tell a whole lot of things about her. It's not divinely inspired; it's by association. A lot of people acting as prophets do that. So when you get a word, you better be sure that the person you're getting a word from has a covenant with God and a covenant in local eldership or leadership, because that person is absolutely speaking into your sanctuary and your life. We're going to get to that in a few minutes. Now, so what does it mean to have perception by intuition or by association? It means direct perception of facts. That's all. What is present, what it sees. It is immediate apprehension of what it sees. It is also perception without insight or foresight. Now, that's a very big issue here that you need to understand. And do me a favor, go onto the shopping cart on kimclement.com and download the MP3 on Sight, Insight, and Foresight. Listen, it's not much money. You can get it. Go in. It's so powerful. It tells you how you can operate in insight and foresight. Everybody operates by sight. We see something, we believe it, because perception is reality. But we've got to also understand that perception has a divine aspect to it as well. That kind of perception is what is able to bring insight and foresight. The person or the operator of divination is the person that only goes by what they see or what they're able to detect around them, and sometimes demonically they're able to go into your memories and they're able to pick up things that are in your memory, because everybody has a memory, but the memory is the past brought into the future. And when you bring the past into the future, you're carrying a memory, and these people people are able to pick up what's in your memory. A dog died in 1995, and you were sad because your dog Sandy died. I hope that's not true. But Sandy, your dog died in 1995. It's in your memory. And what they're able to do is delve into your past, but they're not able to delve into your future. The difference between a prophet of God that is under the inspiration of insight and foresight is able to delve into your future and ignore the past. And if it does go into your past, it is to free you from it. And most people carry their past with them all the time, and they are nourished by their past. They are nourished by memories, and they don't have memories from the future. You have to have memories from the future. Why, Kim? Because you've been there. You carry the future in front of you. You're a witness to your own destiny. You go to the future, you see it, and you bring back memories because you've been there. That's another teaching altogether. But it also means that if anybody ministers to you or a spirit of divination comes to you, it'll base itself on the statistics that are present, and it'll base its prophetic word based on your fear or whatever you've got. So a person's saying, my heart is broken, or they're not saying it, but it's in their memory bank that their dog died in 1995. The dog's name was Sandy. It's clearly in your memory. And what this psychic or whatever does is they dig into your memory and they pull out something that is present, not future. Remember something, the present cannot nourish you. At least the past brought into the present cannot give you breath. It cannot give you life. The only thing that can give you life is time. If there is no time, you're out of time. There's no life. You're in fact dead. You breathe out of time, in time, in time, in time. But where does time come from? Time is not in the past. Time is not even in the present. Time is in the future. And we have to understand that the enemy does not deal with the future. He deals with the past. He deals with memories, and he's able. So he's standing in front of you, and he says to you, there's a dog that died. The dog was Sandy. Okay, the woman's crying. I'm not doing a good job of that. But the woman's crying and weeping. It's so in a trance. And, oh, my goodness, this was a word from wherever. And so that is divination. But that's not the only thing. I'm just saying what they've done is dug into your memories and brought out something. The problem is we cannot live in the past. Now, let's move on. And let me encourage you to go and get sight, insight, and foresight on my shopping cart. Please, guys, it's nothing, just to help you. Okay. Let me give you this saying that I've said a few times. There are many eyes that look, very few that see. There are many eyes that look and very few that see. There's a difference between looking and seeing. What is to look? Look is casual observation. You're observing casually the person's shoes. The person's shoes are old and worn out, so they relate that to something. That's called an association. That's not the prophetic. That is not divine prophetic utterance. That is divination. Now, you may think they're correct because they have such an accuracy, but it comes from knowing something from the observations. So that means to look. You don't want someone to minister over you that is just looking at your present problem. That's why you'll notice when I do my meetings, I always come in at the beginning of the meeting. I don't come before, and I leave immediately after it, so nobody's feeding me any information. My staff around me will not tell me anything. They won't even tell me who is in a meeting, so that everything will come purely from the Spirit. And that's why when I do minister, you'll see it's not perfect. I'm picking up things, but when it comes out, it's explosive. Then you know this is divine. When it's just too perfect, something's not quite that right. So there are a lot of people that look and very few that see. What does it mean to look? Casual observation. What does it mean to see? Acute observation or acute perception. So it means to see a little further than what you can see visibly. Okay. And remember something, what you see, you can enter. Now, I'm addressing you first before I get to scriptures. So, now we have observation and perception. Casual and acute. Now, what you see is very important. Very, very important. For what you see, you can actually enter. What you see, you can enter. You cannot enter something that you cannot see. In other words, you've got to see it. God shows it to you so you can enter it. Now, here's the problem. What you are given to see may be fatal if not from the divine source. What you are given presented with to see may be fatal if it's not from the divine source. If the source that is giving you sight, spiritual sight, is not from God, it could fool you into entering something that is not right for you. Very important. So, let's go on. Let's talk about that now. What's been given to you? Perception without insight or foresight is very dangerous. Okay? Why? Well, let's deal with these three areas. What is sight? We all know we've got sight. Sight is the natural field of vision. Some of you have 20/20 vision, some of you don't. So you have your natural field of vision is what you see here. Then you have insight. Insight is what? An extension of vision. It's seeing beyond the natural observation. So insight is an extension of vision. That's what prophets do when they teach or they minister, or you come into a meeting where I'm worshiping God prophetically. What happens is there's an extension of vision. You see a little bit further and you see beyond your natural observation. Then you have foresight. What is foresight? Foresight, this is great. You're going to love this, because this is where a true prophet comes in, and this is where you can be free from this divination that may have come against you. And I'll be able to categorize it a little bit better in a few minutes. Foresight is wisdom and information gathered from the future. Now you get the wise old sage that knows truth because he's experienced it. That's a different aspect of wisdom. What I'm talking about now is foresight. To see something, and then of course we know that he gives us providence, which is to provide us. That's where it comes from, provider, where it comes from. It provides us with information from the future. It's easy to tell something to somebody that you know and what you can see. Now let's take it further. It's all about you. You need to see further. You need to have wisdom and information to be gathered from the future. Is this crazy or what? If you spoke to the normal person in the street, they would say that's crazy, but yet they're longing for it, they're dying for it, they want it. Everybody wants to know what tomorrow holds, and God gives it in flashes and little glimpses and little pieces and puzzles. Why? Because He cannot give it all to us. You'll notice that's giving us information on the future. Every one of you has that power to receive information from the future. Now, that information is given to you. You have to activate that information. And there are various ways of doing it. You activate it with your faith. You activate it by your actions. Faith without works is dead. You activate it with your words. You activate it. What you have been given, how do you activate it? You activate it with your praise. You give Him thanks. You activate it by aligning yourself with it and preparing yourself for it, so that there's a spiritual posture that is exactly as it's supposed to be. If you've been called to be a king, then your posture should not be as a pauper, but as a king. Even though you may have no money, if what you've been shown is that you are going to come into some wealth, and that you are going to have that for the kingdom of God and use it as a legacy, whatever, then that must be the posture you take now. It actually means acting in reference to the future. And let's take a little bit of a break here, because I want to take a sip from my tea. Are you enjoying it? Okay. So, we're entering into a really nice realm now of activating what we have. So many of you have fallen. So many of you have fallen from into sin, and you've fallen, and you're blaming yourself. And of course, you took some of that action. You blame yourself many times and say, I did this and I did this. And what I'm going to deal with in one of my series is what if. Every one of us goes to that what if moment. What if I'd done this? What if I'd done that? Would have I have had a better life? We're going to deal with that. But I want to say this to you, that you have to activate what comes to you. What information is given to you by God, by the future, has to be activated. And once you do that, you're able to posture yourself accordingly. And it means that if you're in a bad position now, God speaks to you in reference to your future. Can I talk about that for a minute? Because when God spoke to Abraham when he was sitting outside of his tent, Abraham was wondering, this is never going to happen. I'm 100 years of age. I'm supposed to be given a nation. And he must have been pondering on that. And the time came for God to give a word to Sarah. So he was bringing him information. And you know what Abraham did? And he was so excited. He knew it was God. And so he ran inside and he got some water. And then he said, make some bread and get some butter so that they'll stay and move from a visitation to a habitation. Then he ran and he got a good calf. calf, and he said, make this for them. And what he was doing was extending their stay. God was there, and he didn't want God to leave. He wanted the information that God had for him. And of course, he gives them this. He gives God the offering. 3 angels are standing there. He gives God the offering, and once he's done that, God says, where is your wife Sarah? He said, this time next year, at the time of life, she shall bring forth a son. So that's what happened. And now you may say, well, he knew that. He had that information already. Yes, he did. God promised him that information right from the beginning of his walk. In Genesis 12, in Genesis 13, he appears to him. But the day comes where God is going to activate that. Now, how do I know that my actions are going to change it? I promise you they are. When the time was right for that promise to come to pass, what took place? Abraham did not want that time to disappear, and so he gave God an offering. And he said, I want you to bring that word into my house now. And what happened? God deposited that word into Sarah, and of course the following year she had her son Isaac. So what am I telling you? I'm saying to you, some of you are in a difficult position, and yet you're at the place now where God is here, he's speaking to you, you know your time is right, and there's so much fear, and you need to get back. You need to start breathing again. This is all about breathing. This whole series today is about resuscitation, getting you back to life, like my friend Michael Bavin. Just take 2 minutes with me, please, because this is a very important part of what we do. I want you to pray and say, God, you know what? I want you to stay. Now you say, well, Kim, God's around all the time. But when he comes to visit you, remember something, he's there for a reason. I love when God speaks to Abraham after that. And this is after Abraham had given him water, made bread for him, and got one of his best calves and give it as an offering. God deposits the word in their house. Now listen carefully, please. God deposits the word into their house. What happens then? God speaks. The 3 angels, or it's God. So they speak and say, this is what God says. Shall we tell Abraham what we're about to do, considering that he shall become the father of nations, considering that he shall take this throughout the earth, and that he shall literally raise up a nation. Abraham hadn't done that yet, but God was speaking to Abraham in reference to the future. He wasn't saying, well, Abraham's sitting at the door of the tent and he's not done much. He was saying, I'm speaking to him in reference to the future. And I want you to know that I believe there's something about that. Because what Abraham was doing was giving in reference to the future. When you give to God, don't give in reference to your present and say, well, I don't have. You give in reference to your future. This is how I want to be in the future, and I want to give in reference to my future. And that's what I want you to do right now. And I'm going to play the piano, maybe sing a song to you, while you go to the red link there and you give a gift to God, a special gift. Say, Lord, I've been nourished, but I'm going to be free today. At the end of this broadcast, I'm going to be totally free. And go ahead and do it. Pray and ask, say, God, what do you want? What good calf can I give you? So that this visitation will extend into a habitation, and I can give not in reference to my present, but in reference to this is how I'm going to be giving one day. Go ahead and do it now. Some of you have fallen. Some of you have fallen right onto your knees. Some of you have stumbled. Some of you have stumbled right into his arms. And some of you have fallen. And some of you have fallen right onto your knees. That is where he wants you to be, right next to him. That's where he wants you. That is where he wants you to be, right next to him. Don't worry if you've fallen. Some of you have fallen. Some of you have fallen right onto your knees. That's right. Some of you have stumbled. Some of you have stumbled right onto your knees. Some of you have fallen. And some of you have stumbled right into his arms. Yes, Lord. That is where he wants you. Yes, he does. To be right next to him. That is where he wants you. To be right next to him. I pray you touch every life. We will stumble, we will fall. The enemy will stand around us pointing fingers. But you are right next to us. Some of you are fallen. You know where you're fallen? Right onto your knees. And that's where he wants you. To be right next to him. To be right next to him. That's where he wants you. To be right next to him. It's okay to fall. Thank you for these offerings that you've brought in today, Lord. Even though it's given to a ministry to use, Father, I pray that you take this offering and receive it from their hands. And everything I'm speaking today, release them. Release into them and release every one of us from any suffocation in the Spirit so we can breathe in the Spirit. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, so that's the thing when God's presence comes in. It's so incredible. And you know what? It just takes one little song. Just one little bit of worship to lift your hands up and thank him. It just changes everything. Because you know what it brings? The presence of the Lord. Okay, let's move on. Acts chapter 16. Verse 9 to 19. I'm gonna turn this. I can read it to you. Acts chapter 16. Let's give you some examples of where divination took place in the New Testament. Because, you know, I'm going to show you some Old Testament scriptures now. But I'm going to also, and we did read them, but I want to just give these to you as well. Let's go to Acts chapter 16. We've got 20 minutes left. A lot of you getting filled with the Spirit right now. And I can't help what God does while I'm speaking. We can't help it. It's His Word that's happening. And you know what else? Suffocation is getting out of your house. Pythos is not able to do any of this anymore in your life. Why? Knowledge. Knowledge is power. When you understand and if you can find that culprit, remember you can tread on serpents. You can tread on them. This one will be trodden on today. Okay. Acts chapter 16. Let's talk about what happened here with Paul. For so many of you that have read this before, I want you to look at this. Acts 16 verse 7. After they had come to Mysia, they tried to go into Bithynia. I'm acting like I know all these big words. But the Spirit did not permit them. So they were on a journey, thinking they were going to the right place. And one of the versions says the Spirit of Jesus did not permit them. The other version says the Spirit of Jesus resisted them. Now, I've had that experience before. I'm on my way to a city, and the Spirit resists me and says, you can't go, you know. But Lord, you were leading me. That's okay. God is, remember, the King of time and space. He knows what's going on in the realms of the demonic, and he has to deal with something in another city. So passing by Mysia, they came to Troas. Troas is another city. And a vision appeared to Paul in the night, and a man of Macedonia stood and pleaded with him, saying, come over to Macedonia and help us. Now, after he had seen the vision, immediately we sought to go to Macedonia, concluding that the Lord had called us to preach the gospel. Did you know they had to come to conclusions as life went on? So there was a certain spontaneity, because the present is instantaneous. It's something that just happens, and so the present is instantaneous, and so they decided that this is what we should be doing. So therefore, sailing from Troas, we ran a straight course to Samothrace, and then next day we came to Neapolis. Okay, now they've come to these cities, and while they're in the city, a woman that loves God is baptized in her household, and she persuades Paul and the guys to stay in their house, and she supports them. Now, here's the thing I want you to see is Acts chapter 16, verse 16. Now it happened as we went to prayer. that a certain slave girl possessed with a spirit of divination, there it is right there, met us. Now hear what this is. Who profited, who brought her masters much profit by fortune telling. Now this is not fortune tellers that are on the street out there, those nincompoops that are giving you a thing for $10. We're talking about a spirit now that is operative very close to the apostle and very close to the church. That's what she's after. However, what does the spirit of divination do to a community, and what does it do to a country even? And as I've said to you, the White House, this is what's happening politically right now. The spirit of Pythos is there. It wants to suffocate the morality of this nation and the spirituality of this nation. And there's so much I could tell you about that. That's for another day. That's the den. You come to the den, you'll find about that on Saturday. But now we are from the Matrix, so I've got to move. So, what does the spirit of divination do? It brings much profit to her masters. So there's a profitability that takes place when the spirit of Pythos is present in a person, a nation, a community, and that's just another thing I'll talk about another time. That's why that's why it's so cozy in so many places. Now this girl followed Paul and us and cried out, saying, "These men are servants of the Most High God who proclaim to us the way of salvation." Now, this is her prophetic word that she's giving to them, but it's under the spirit of divination. So it's profane, really. It's spoken from a source that is not in covenant with God. And she is saying this. Now, you know what I find amazing here is that she says this and she's correct. But what is she doing? Adulation, puffery, and compliments, and flattery. So she's saying something, but what do you see there that she doesn't have? She doesn't have the future. She is repetitious. She's saying the same thing over and over and over. Now, hear me out. She knows this is fanning that flame of, she's flattering them. They need some approval from the marketplace. They need some approval from the people that they're working with. And so Paul doesn't stop her. Now, please understand that it wasn't recognized straight away. So the spirit is getting closer and closer to Paul. So because Paul, at this stage, I believe he didn't know that it was a spirit of divination. He's listening to her. Now, look what it says. It says, this he did for many days. If this great apostle couldn't recognize that this spirit was trying to get closer and closer by feeding his own desire to hear something or trying to flatter him, come on now, this happens to anybody, and it gets closer and closer. But look at what happens. As she says this for many days, Paul gets greatly annoyed. He gets disturbed and annoyed in his spirit. Prophecy should never do that. He gets annoyed and said to her, to the spirit, not to her, to the spirit, "I command you in the name of Jesus Christ to come out of her." And the spirit came out, say it, that very hour. So, that hour is a very important thing that you need to understand. The spirit came out that hour. Why? Not because necessarily commanded it to, but he recognized that it was a spirit of divination. You've got to define what it is. Now, it doesn't mean you've got to stand and shout and scream at spirits, but if something is flattering you or complimenting you and there's an annoyance that's coming, watch out. This thing's trying to get close to you. It'll even do it by telling you something that you know about yourself. And you'll say, oh, this is of God. And it may not be. What she was saying was good. But was it God? Let me just speak about that for a minute. Because I already say, oh, everything is good is from God. Not everything good is God, though. People can do good things that are very evil. Now, God can be involved in it, but good is not always God. Something that sounds good doesn't necessarily mean that it's God. Something that is preached good doesn't mean that it's God. Something that's prophesied good doesn't mean that it's God. Good is not always God. In that sense. So, what's happening here is there is good being spoken. Good. These are servants of the Most High God who've come to show us the way of salvation. She's not mocking. She's speaking to them. Now, he realizes this is not God, therefore this is not good. This is not right. And it is invading our sanctuary. I'll get to that in a minute. So what happens? Greatly annoyed, he says, come out of and the spirit has to come out because it's recognized. Now, you've got to understand all of this is very important because this is New Testament as well. And it can get close to you, the spirit, and begin to suffocate you. I want you to remember something, folks. I have a Twitter account, and you can follow me. I send out tweets, and in fact, I'd like to read some of them because they're so powerful. But I want you to know that that I have some very interesting tweets that I send out, and people write me things all the time and telling me they were blessed by it and all kinds of things. But anyway, I don't want to read them now, but I would love to do that sometime. But you can get onto it. It's called Prophet Kim. And honestly, it's the funnest thing because I'll get little thoughts and send little clips. Jane also has one, my wife. It's called Jane's Corner. There you see the little things that you won't see behind the scenes. You can, please, you can join our Twitter and begin receiving my tweeticides, prophecies. Okay, let's move now. Let's go to the next one. Leviticus, Old Testament. I'll just read it to you, or you can go there and underline it. You're in a study right now. Leviticus 19, verse 26 and 31. Number one, this is what it says, in essence. You shall not practice divination or soothsaying. Soothsaying? That's right. I call them soothsayers. They are people that prophesy what others say. It's called other saying, some saying. Now, what is some saying? Very important that you understand this. Some saying is you repeating what other people believe, but you're not totally convinced about it. That's what a some sayer is. Now, I don't want to say what some say. I want to say what he say. I don't want to say what some say. I want to say what he say. That's what the truth is. I can hear what somebody else thinks. It's an opinion to me, unless it's really them speaking from God. But I cannot necessarily say it. Verse 31 says, give no regard to familiar spirits. Do not seek after them. And this is the part I want you to get here. Do not seek after them to be what? Defiled by them. Defiled by them. What does that mean? It means the whole thing about familiarity or familiar spirits and divination is it's familiar. It gets close to you. It gets familiar with you. And familiarity will equalize. It's on the same level with you. And that then gives him the power to take you and strangle you, which means you lose spiritual breath. Now, that isn't actually a thing, because the Bible says if we walk in the Spirit, we must also live in the Spirit. And the word live there is breathe. So, we breathe physically, but we also breathe spiritually. He wants to take your breath away. Is anybody watching me right now, have you felt just recently or perhaps for a while that you have no energy? Have you felt that it's almost difficult to cope with it? And what he's done is, and I teach this in my lecture, and you can get onto it if you want. And it's the Destiny course that I'm on, the School of the Prophet. You can go there as well and hit the link and join and become a student. But I teach in great depth about how the Spirit operates by giving you anxiety. And so what he does is he's consuming of you, is messing around with your brain, with your mind, and feeding you stuff. And once he's got enough of that in you, he's able to swallow, and not literally, of course, we know that, but he suffocates you, and you suffocate. I feel, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to make this. It's, well, what am I going to do? I don't have enough time. You don't have enough time? Who told you that? Where is time? Time is in the future. One of the greatest causes of anxiety is, I don't have enough time. Where do you get your time from? You get your time from the future. You don't get it from the past. You can't borrow it back. But there is such a thing, which I'll teach another time, called the redemption of time, where God can redeem your time. There can be a redemption of time. Only God can do it, though. And that's the good news. If you lost an opportunity, God can redeem that back for you. Purchase it back. That's the power of a sovereign God we serve. I hope that helped you. So, Kim, are you saying to me that I can spiritually stop breathing? Absolutely. Your spirit had to come to life. Remember when you gave your life to Christ and you were born again? What happened? Your spirit came back to life. Your spirit was dead in sin. Now it's alive, but it's just like you and I. It has to be nourished and it has to breathe. If you get out of breath, if you have a lung disease, you get out of breath, what happens? You slow down. So if it can take your breath away, what does it do? Slow you down so there is no time. Please understand this. Now, in Matthew chapter 4, when Jesus is taken up for the temptation, what happens? What happens? He is tempted with three things, but the one thing that the devil says is about the bread that he must turn. The stones he must turn to bread, excuse me. And Jesus says, man shall not live. That word live is breathe. Man shall not breathe. And he's talking about spiritual, because I'll explain what those words mean. By bread alone, which is natural nourishment. So he's not able to survive just on what is present. But he lives and breathes by every word that proceeds out the mouth of God. Not just written word, but words that proceed out the mouth of God. What does that word breathe? Man shall not live, man shall not breathe alone by natural nourishment. That word breathe, I'm going to break them up into three different Greek words. Okay, very quickly. Theonuo, which means breathe with God. God will cause you to breathe with him. There's a pace that you go at. Okay, I'll teach this in great depth in my lectures. Okay? Breathing with God. If you hold your breath, what happens? I don't know, I've never done it. But when my kids were small, they used to do it sometimes. Caleb did that once. He held his breath to try and spite us for something when he was a kid, and he started going blue. And I said, well, you're going to have to breathe sometime. But anyway, breathe with God. Don't rush. Don't get upset. Don't get uptight. Suko, the next word for breathe, live, is spirit breath. The Spirit provides you with oxygen, spiritual oxygen. The Spirit provides you with breath. How? By every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God. When God speaks to you, you begin to breathe. That's why it's important not only to read this word. Please, don't get me wrong. You must read this word. But God speaks as well, and he speaks out of this word, but listen to him. When you go to a meeting, when you hear somebody teaching, words that are coming out of God's mouth, and specifically prophets, when they prophesy life, you are getting breath so you can move with God. Then the other word is zoe nuo. Zoe nuo means to make alive. In other words, when God breathes through you and your spirit is breathing with God, you're able to open your mouth and make alive. Speak and things will come to life. Michael Babin is back to life because words proceeded out of the mouth of God and he came back to life. It's so powerful. Now I'm going to finish with a scripture that I'm going to go on with next week, okay? Because we're running out of time. You, my dear warriors, and I are running out of time. And so I just want to tell you I love this moment together with you. You must breathe. I want you to be free of suffocation. I want you to be free. How, Kim? How? By God breathing in you by his spoken word. God breathing into you by every word that proceeds out of his mouth. When last did you hear God? When last did you hear God speaking to you? You know when you heard him speaking to you? In the last 45 minutes. These words that proceeded out of his mouth are giving you life. Giving you life. All of you, close your Bibles now. Hold up your hands and breathe. No, don't just breathe. Take a deep breath and breathe in. Don't stop. Spirit of God, I'm asking you, as they breathe right now, breathe into them. You shall live and not die. These are his words. But you shall live to declare my glory. Your children, your children's children shall prophesy, shall invade the culture. You shall not be broken poor forever. He is your provider, and I speak from God. Don't stop breathing. Close your eyes just for this minute. Speak, O Spirit of God, into every life. Remove the strangulation. Cast away all those things you're thinking about. The news that you heard today. The economic breakdown. Is God gone? Has he left? No. He's here. Breathe. There you go. Lord, I release upon them your Spirit. Breathe into them, Spirit of God. And refresh them now with your presence. And remove every form of strangulation this very second. In the name of Jesus. Take one more breath. Thank you so much. You've received something now. Let's wrap this up if you haven't done this to the meeting. And go to that donation button and give an offering to God. It's the only way I can do it, so you can connect with Him and support us so we can get this out to the rest of the world. Thank you for doing that. I love you very much.
Over 40 years ago, Kim and I embarked on a ministry journey that has now become a global network through the power of the internet. As part of this pioneering work, we are gathering people from all over the world to worship together, grow in our faith, and inspire hope through an uplifting message. We are dedicated to reaching out with God's message of hope and love to all without discrimination or judgment. We invite you to join our House of Destiny free membership that allows you to connect with members from around the world. Through our prayer wall, you can post your requests and have others join us in prayer. It's so powerful when the saints gather and believe for a breakthrough. We invite you to join today. Simply click the online church login and sign up. We are here for you, and we have worked hard to provide the resources and tools to help you grow in your faith. Join us today and be part of a community that inspires hope, brings restoration to life, and often healing from the past. Together, we can make a difference, and we thank you for your ongoing support.
I'm excited to announce we're having a huge MyPillow spring sale, and here's a few examples. Buy one of our MyPillow 2.0s, you get another MyPillow 2.0 absolutely free. Made with cooling technology, the best pillow ever just got even better. And this just in, 9 brand new colors and styles of our percale bed sheets. They're made with the finest long staple cotton, and now you can save 50% or more. That's as low as $24.98. And for the first time this year, I'm bringing you our My Slippers and Sandals for as low as $25 a pair. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get your MyPillow 2.0s. Buy one, get one free. Percale sheets as low as $24.98. My Slippers and Sandals as low as $25 a pair. And for a limited time, when you order $75 or more, your entire order ships absolutely free.
We here at the House of Destiny are partnering with you to let our viewers, of course, know about your company. It's Beverly Hills Precious Metal.
Andrew, explain how that works.
So I'll walk you through it right now. So if you go to bh-pm.com, right there on the homepage, you'll see a form that you could fill out. And that form is very important in letting us know how we can help you. So you just put in your first name, last name, email address, phone number. There's a section that says, how did you hear about us? And in there, put Kim Clement. And then there's a portion where you could write a couple of notes down on the bottom. Usually within about 24 to 48 hours, we'll contact you. And then by phone call, and then we'll go over everything with you. This isn't a high pressure deal. We always recommend that if you feel uncomfortable, take a step back, pray about it. You will gain the answers that you need by doing that, and come back to us when you're comfortable.